Welcome back, listeners, to the Cosmic Confluence podcast. Now, uh, today's conversation, oh, by the way, I'm your host, and as always, and today's conversation, listeners, is one, I have been sitting with for a while because honestly, it lives in that space where curiosity meets skepticism, where personal experience doesn't always fit neatly into language. We talk a lot about intuition, spirituality, energy, and healing. But then, beneath all that, there is a quieter question. How do we know what we know? How do we stay grounded when our experiences feel expansive or symbolic or sometimes even supernatural? My guest today has walked a very interesting path. She began as a mental health therapist, trained in evidence based frameworks, and over time found herself pulled toward intuitive work, energy healing, shamanic practices, and eventually something she describes as a life altering lightning strike that reshaped her relationship with healing and consciousness. I hope that everyone will definitely resonate, but at least some of you will definitely resonate with that. Others might feel curious about, but then cautious, and some might feel resistance. It's fine, it's okay. And all of that is welcome here because this is not a conversation about blind belief or spiritual bypassing. It is about experience, meaning, responsibility, and how we exactly make sense of what happens to us. So, wherever you are listening from, I invite you to stay open, stay thoughtful, and stay present. Listeners, meet my incredible guest, Michele Lundstrom. Michelle, welcome to Cosmic Conference, and I'm really glad that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful introduction. I love everything that you just said.
Oh, no, it's absolutely true, and I really I would love to explore what exactly happened. But before that, Michelle, to begin with, first, because you began your career as mental health therapist. It comes with structure, there is ethics, then clinical framework. So, at what point did intuition start to feel like something you trusted as much as your training? Because it can be like really, um, it can be like two different ends of the spectrum, like colliding with each other.
Yeah, so most people think that intuition is something really loud, like a lightning bolt, right? A, a bold vision, a voice that interrupts everything. But real intuition is really much quieter than that. It's a subtle nudge. It's often a really soft knowing, a feeling that passes through before the mind even has time to argue. And that's kind of the key. And so when I was a mental health therapist, I would have these moments that before I even had time to think, something would come out of me, a question or just a knowing where the
Mm.
person felt so deeply seen. And I didn't really understand what that was. I kind of like in my own ego, maybe thought it was me. But what I later came to realize as I humbled myself was this was beautiful assistance. And, intuition is that quantum physics. It's this information that comes from somewhere else to us. And when it's in that high frequency for healing, it's absolutely beautiful, but it feels almost like your own thought, especially at first.
Hmm. Something that I really, kind of found it very interesting that, you humbled yourself. Like, uh, sometimes, when we have some interesting experiences or we come across something that inherently we wouldn't believe or maybe our inner self believes, but then the work or maybe something that we are studying is kind of not against it per se, but it's kind of contradicting. We kind of feel ourselves in that huge dilemma, or sometimes it can be ego or sometimes it can be judgment or anything. Like, how exactly was the process like that humbling yourself?
Humbling myself, well, that's where kind of spirituality comes in of, sitting in meditation and really kind of
Mm,
paying attention to, as I ask the question from my heart, how I could best help a certain client, especially when I was brand new. And, that's those moments, right, where, for me, that subtle, intuition, it doesn't demand any attention, it waits for our presence, and so being present in meditation and, kind of getting the information that, well, we're helping you. And so,
mm,
um, that in itself was very humbling to, in graduate school and education, there's a lot of, I don't know, ego building, right? Where it's like
mm,
you will learn these theories and these processes and you will help people to heal. And really, I found that those get us so far and they can be absolutely wonderful and beautiful and healing for people. And then it's like people hit this wall and that's humbling in itself as when you're in that therapist role and someone hits that wall and the skills and the tools that you have only can take you to a certain point.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Michelle, before we further dive deep into the intuition and everything, something that I personally really, really admire is that, you are deeply connected to animals and nature as long as as long as, you can remember. I mean, if you
Mhm.
can share maybe a bit about that. And because I feel that right now, this connection, or maybe it kind of sometimes look as performative, maybe. I mean, I am not here to offend anyone out there, but um sometimes it's just for the sake of it. How exactly, like, what we as humans can learn from animals and nature, that is infinite. It is infinite. So if you can maybe share a bit about, like, how exactly did you discover, or you knew from beginning, that you have this innate connection with nature, with animals?
Yeah, so I grew up in a really kind of rural area and
Mm,
those became my friends. And so I would climb the trees and I would sit in them and they would share their wisdom with me. Again, it's a very subtle thing and I would tame wild cats. That was kind of my fun pastime as a child is, seeing these scared, sweet little furry beings, and I would, try and get them to trust me and see that I was safe and I just wanted to give them love. And so,
mm,
nature is everything, and trees have feelings and emotions, and it's important that we work together and in harmony with nature. That if
mm.
we're going to ask a tree to give up its life and make that sacrifice, that we should ask. We should be respectful in that way. And the same thing with an animal.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. That's really, really beautiful. Really beautiful. Amazing. Okay, Michelle, back to intuition, and this is specifically intuition versus interpretation. Like, a concern many people have with intuitive work is projection. Um, and because the meaning here is powerful. So how do you personally distinguish between intuition and your own interpretation, especially when working with others?
Yeah, so we all have this filter, and that's part of the training of being like a professional intuitive versus just kind of playing games with your own intuition. And so when you really are in the present moment and the very, very now, and you're just open to receiving, right? You have to pay attention to the filters that you put on it. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. I learned this lesson the hard way. I'm going to tell you where I made a mistake. So I was giving a reading to this woman, and she happened to be a friend of mine. And I was like, I can see it. This wonderful man has come into your life and he cuddles with you. And he is just so kind. And I was like, he just like follows you around like a puppy." And she looked at me and she cocked her head and she said, Michelle, I got a puppy. You're reading my puppy." So, yes, those filters can come in because I wanted so bad for my friend to find the perfect partner. She had been through so much, and my heart wanted that for her. And because my heart so wanted her to find love, I projected that. So when I read the energy of a male energy that just loved and adored her, I was overjoyed. And so, yes, I interpreted that through my filter. So we can all do that. And I'm sure there's still moments where I do that now and don't catch it. I do my best to be really mindful of that and to really kind of get out of my own way, and really be in the here and now and trust it in the moment, because the second that the brain has time to analyze it is when we start to put our projections on it. So if I had just gone with the pure intuition, I would have said something like, I feel this male energy that's really loving in your life right now. But my human brain, then before I said anything to her, grabbed it, applied this filter and projection of what I wanted for her. And so then it alters it.
Wow. Mm, mm. That is really, really interesting. And how do you make sure your intuitive insights support a person's self-trust rather than, replace it?
You know what? That's actually really super important. In empowering people to tap into their own intuition is something that I feel like is really important, so that they don't need me as a resource anymore. I don't want anyone to become dependent on me, um, for that, because we all have that inner resource. And there's so many things in various cultures and societies that begin to try and create separation from our own inner wisdom. And so helping people kind of reconnect in the subtle ways that are in alignment with whatever their natural skills and abilities are is really important, because I mean, trusting our own inner wisdom is really helpful just in day-to-day life with very basic things.
True, I agree. I agree. And um, this is also very interesting. I mean, you work with chakra and crystal pendulums to assess energy. Super, super. I mean, it's interesting. Um, so I'm curious, but then I'll be very honest. Sometimes I really become like a bit of a skeptic here.
Yeah.
So for someone like me, Michelle, how would you describe what is actually happening during an energy assessment? What exactly does it look like?
So the energy assessment, when I learned that actually was when I decided to try and become a professional intuitive and do that work. So I mean that
Mm,
opened up so much for me. But holding the pendulum in our hands is, also called divining. People search for water that way with divining rods
mm,
or use a pendulum. And it's working with the science of kinesiology. So it's the wisdom of the body knows, the consciousness knows there's something in us that innately always knows truth. I believe the heart always knows truth. And so there's these micro movements that you're not intending to move the pendulum, but you're holding it and it's bypassing the mind. So when we get
mm,
around the lower mind or the ego and can start to tap into consciousness or start to tap into even just the wisdom of the body and the body knowing truth, right? So if my energy field and aura and chakras are connecting with someone else, and the pendulum is able to kind of give me that information, and I'm combining that with channeling, I'm combining that with other things to explore what that energy has to say. So I feel like it's really important to look at um, what the energy center in their body, what their body wisdom is wanting to communicate to them versus just simply looking at is it balanced or imbalanced, is it open or closed, or and I don't believe in force opening someone's chakras because there's
Mm.
times where I see that it's closed and my guides are telling me actually that's what's right for them in this moment. That's kind of where it needs to be not closed but contracted. I don't think they ever completely close if we're still alive, but being able to use that science of kinesiology then to connect with a pendulum to tap into that wisdom does bypass, the human mind, which bypasses some of those extra filters that we can kind of put on it that get in our way with intuition.
Hmm. Hmm. And you know why I really kind of find it because once again skepticism will always say that it's all woo woo, it doesn't hold any meaning. But what I appreciate is your background in mental health, because it invites a grounded lens. um so, Michelle, one more, question before something that is really, really interesting, to all the listeners. I'm telling all of you, it's going to be very interesting. But before that, Michelle, how do you talk about energy without disconnecting people from their nervous systems or maybe their emotions, or their responsibility for their own healing?
Energy is everything, or emotions are energy, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
if you think about, emotions and we wanna learn how to kind of work with the energy of them, and think of ones that can easily be alchemized into the other. For example, fear and courage, right? If we have
Mm-hmm.
fear, it's easy to alchemize that into courage rather than joy, right? If we have anxiety, it's easier to move that into happiness or excitement because the energy signature is more similar. And so emotions carry energy, and emotions are actually incredibly logical, right? So if I have anxiety, anxiety says, like, I'm procrastinating something. It's our procrastination alert system. It gets us to do something. And if it's manufactured anxiety, then there's really nothing to do. So logically, we can kind of say, okay, that's manufactured anxiety. I don't actually have to do anything about that. And then you can move that into the excitement. Well, I'm free to do these other things in my day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I agree. That makes sense.
Yeah, and our nervous system, we have that electromagnetic field around us, right? We are energy. That's how MRIs work. So there's science and there's technology that shows us that we are electromagnetic and we have energy in our body. And so all of that is flowing and moving, and that ties into, again, the chakras as well.
True, true. And this is exactly, what is kind of something that personally I would love to explore, that, how how do we kind of create this confluence between science and spirituality? Because I don't think that humanity can just survive or thrive basis on just one um foundation here. I mean, um it's not just only spirituality or just not only science, because um you know changes always are constant, changes happen. And when these two are blending with each other, they may contradict or they may agree with each other. But I think that exactly what invites us to explore ourselves, the entire humanity, all the aspects of humanity, and in a better, in a conscious, in a more informed way.
Yeah, if we could all just get out of our own way with our truth, right? So, I mean, it's okay for two people to have different truths. Like, why couldn't that occur at the same time? I think we apply a lot of things that are traits of humanity into things that are spiritual, but it's entirely possible that there's a context we can't even comprehend. So it's okay if that we have different truths.
Mm.
And I think if we're all more open to that, right, and we can again get the ego out of the way, right? And I think that humbling and that moving the ego out of the way and really kind of moving into the stillness and getting into our hearts and asking, does that feel true to me? Right. So if I hear something or someone tells me something that's totally outside of the framework or context of anything I have ever believed, and I'm like curious about it, oftentimes that curiosity is a signal to me like, well, there's something about this. Or if it makes me angry, even where I'm like, no, that's wrong. Then I step back from that ego saying that's wrong and get into my heart and say, okay, let me check with my heart. Is there truth in this? Does this feel true in my body? Right? We get so caught up in the mind and the mental chatter, but that can be from things that we've heard, things that we've been taught to believe, versus our heart knows a deeper wisdom and truth and is a brain with neurotransmitters in it that doesn't have the same kind of computing skills as the brain.
Agree. Agree. Okay, Michelle, before we wrap up, I think this is such an important and very interesting question. Like you, in 2019, you were struck by lightning, an experience you describe as life-altering. You call it as lightning medicine. If you can please share, like describe, share, I'm really, really interested to know.
Yes, I mean, it's a deeply profound, life-changing, experience for me, and many, I don't know about other places, but I've studied many North and South American, shamanic cultures who all believe that, getting struck by lightning is an initiation by the elements to the shamanic path.
Oh,
There's
okay.
other key things too, like near-death experiences, long kind of dark nights of the soul kind of things tend to be things that are precursors to um, kind of being called on that shamanic, more earth based path. And so when that happened, it was a very, strange thing in that it was a storm that came out of nowhere in the middle of the afternoon. And the lightning came through the window, melted the glass, and hit me in three spaces in my back. And it was a side flare, not the full bolt. One of my beautiful tree friends, who I love and adore, and I'm sending gratitude to now, took a bulk of the lightning bolt, but it was still enough to create a lot of nervous system damage for me. But also, what I noticed is that intuition that had always been there was
Mm.
amplified. And the energy that was coming out of my body, and when I touch people, they feel it in their body, and that's one of the things if people are in person with me and they're skeptical and they're curious and they have an open mind and are willing to receive or try and experiment, I'll run that, energy that I channel. It's not of me, it's through me. It's a channeled, um divine energy that then comes through my hands, and people report feeling tingling sensations or heat or
Oh,
cool or um, energized. So it's very, yeah, it's been a very interesting experience.
definitely, definitely. Oh, and how did this experience affect you psychologically, not just spiritually, Michelle?
Psychologically, it was hard to kind of tolerate being in my body. I had to really ground and connect to the earth. And so for me, it was kind of, I think, what a lot of people experienced during COVID was that
Mhm.
stillness and that stopping and not doing as much. But that time for me was having to lay on the earth in order to be able to tolerate all the energy and the electricity that was, going through my body. And the earth
Mhm.
eventually helped me to acclimate to that and be able to live at this different kind of frequency with this, energy in my body that, I didn't have before. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that became something that brought me more into being more intentional about meditation and my yoga practice, and really being mindful about um, sitting in stillness and listening in the stillness. And I mean, psychologically, of course, that's going to have a huge impact on anyone.
True, true. Yeah, that's natural. And I think extraordinary experiences, it can also expand perception, but then um it can destabilize identity. It can what I find compelling is not just the event itself, but then someone like integrate how someone integrates it. So before we wrap up, like you often speak about walking alongside people rather than healing them, like
Yeah.
healing as co-creation. So what does responsibility look like in intuitive or energetic healing?
Yeah, so I'm not the healer, right? I'm the channel. Just like I said, I'm not the one giving the energy. Like it's not of me, it's through me. Um and the person has to be able to agree with that. I mean, there's that internal consent. And so if the other person truly believes, they're in a sense, giving that spiritual permission of I'm ready to receive this. I'm ready to heal, and it becomes
Mm,
a collaboration. So walking beside the person in that um my role is to bring those energies through or bring that information through, and their role is just as equally important. So it's a collaboration, because if they're not ready to do the work, then what's the point of doing it, right? Or if they're not really believing in healing, then there's the missing spiritual component. And then they might become dependent on me if I just balance their chakras, and they'd have to keep coming back for that. But if they truly begin to understand them and learn to sense them and learn the signs and signals in their life, um, for example, when people's third eye is off, sometimes they can be very
mm.
overly analytical. And that can just be a sign like, oh, I think I might be out of balance there. And then, you know, when if they come to me, then it's definitely a collaboration. It's um, you know, doing that healing together, co-creating that.
Like channelizing your energy, balancing it.
Yeah.
Mm,
And channeling energies and asking for spiritual assistance depending on what the person's belief system is. If they have,
mm.
an ascended master, a god, a goddess, a deity that they choose to work with, and, asking for that assistance to come in and be a part of it. The more collaboration, the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think this also matters because spiritual spaces can um sometimes blur accountability if necessary. So, Michelle, before we conclude, if listeners they would like to further connect with you, and seek more wisdom, or maybe they have their own thoughts, own experiences to share with you, what would be the best way?
Yeah, my website is luminousignis.com. So luminous, Luminous, Ignis, Ignus.com. And you can find all my socials and everything else from there.
That's amazing. And listeners, I'll make that easy for you because I'll have all the links in the show notes. So find them attached with this episode on whichever platform you listen to your podcast to. And I think what stays with me from this conversation is not certainty, it is curiosity. Like, listeners, whether you see intuition as energy, psychology, maybe symbolism, or something which is still unnamed, I think the deeper question is this: how do we relate to our inner experiences without giving them unchecked authority? Cosmic Confluence is not about choosing sides, it is about holding space where multiple truths can coexist, just as Michelle said. So, Michelle, thank you so much. Sharing your journey with honesty, humility, discernment. This was absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to all the listeners. Thank you for staying present in the tension. And if something stirred in you today, let it settle. You do not need to define it immediately. Until next time, stay curious and keep listening to Cosmic Confluence. This is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.